Right, so it's another late one tonight, not because of the weather, just because I am easily distracted, and having spent most of the day repotting plants, which is kind of relevant, I think we have a narrow window where I can get it done before it's dark, but we'll see. Okay, so let's get on with that. So, as you will see at the sign out, this is it. I was pushing my window, so today's planting is actually kind of related to two things. The first is that I was repotting a lot of my succulents today, and there were certain seedlings coming up, and then the other is that our dominant tree for this sort of region, the Muombo, or one of the Muombos, which is Brachystegia spiciformis, I'd meant to gather a whole bunch of seeds when they were falling back in sort of September time, I guess, when I think about it, but I failed to gather them and scatter them through the areas where we are lacking them, because although they're dominant, they are fairly slow to recolonize. They move about 60 feet per generation, which is about 15 to 20 meters for people in metric, so which is not fast for a very slow maturing tree. There's 11 mature ones and about 100 immature ones, maybe more than 100 immature ones coming up around, but there's some areas where they're very much lacking, where I would like them to be, and so I brought 4 seedlings that I found in succulent pots as I was repotting today. Now I'm planting them as 3 because a couple of them I think might have had a bit too much damage as they came out of the pots, and a couple of them I'm fairly confident are not, so it's just I'm counting it as 2 in total, even though I'm planting 3 places. I'm planting them with Trichilia fragrans of the wild type, because I've learned from the variegated variety getting sunburned over the Mahogonies, even at this time of year, they do not like full sun. So we've got the 3 Trichilia fragrans going in with them. We've also got an aloe that I don't actually know the identity of going in with them, but in the middle, which is probably the part that everyone's assuming is the Brachystegia because I started with it, is actually Furcraea. I will try and find the species name and put it up, but I can't actually remember that off the top of my head. And with that, there is a Musikili had popped up in the pot with that. Now, the Furcraea, it wasn't so much that it wasn't supposed to be in that pot, it was that it was getting very big and very spiky, and I don't really need that in a pot. One of the nice things about the Furcraeas as opposed to the agaves is they don't tend to sucker as vigorously. This one does seem to sucker a little bit, but this is one of the trunk-forming ones, and effectively the only time I really need to worry about there being a lot more of it is once it flowers, which should be in about sort of 10 to 15 years. Until then it should stay relatively tidy, and that should give them Musikili next to it time to come up, and it should shelter it in the meantime, and it should be quite a good marker for this area of trees. Yeah, so that's going in with a Musikili that has popped up in the pot, which is one of the native Mahogonies in the middle. And also some Thunbergia, the black-eyed Susan, which is also native, although this came from seeds I planted originally that have then gone feral, but it is a native species. Anyway, so finally with the Brachystegias, I'm also planting Tugela Cliffs Kalanko, and on one of them I'm also planting some Huernia because the seedling was in a pot with the Huernia, and it's one of the Huernias which is so vigorous that I don't feel the need to propagate it on purpose anymore, so I just thought I'll just plant it out and see if it will coat flat in the soil. Usually I plant them where there's a lot more drainage, because most of the Huernias and Stapelias and other Stapelioids seem to do a lot worse on flat ground than on sloped ground, or at least well-drained ground. So we'll see if that Huernia takes, but if it doesn't, it's compost for the Brachystegia. If it does, at least I haven't damaged the root of the Brachystegia moving out. Okay, so that is all for today. I'm not even sure if I'm actually on camera, because it is quite dark, but that should be all, and so tune in tomorrow to see if I am more organized then.